All right, I've already hit record, so I don't have to actually do that this time. I am thinking because although we're really doing a really good job, I think, of like cranking through this whole like scope creep and it's beating this horse left and right. But one of the things you mentioned that I think would be a fun one to get to talk about is staying on task and avoiding distractions. Because you threw that out there, so it was intriguing to me, and I mean, you gave me a little more information, but what are you thinking about how we want to tackle that?
So this topic kind of falls into the idea that people can multitask. Because truthfully, multitasking is a lie. Because really, you should work on one task at a time, get it done, move on. Typically, you will get it done faster because you're focused on it. You're not having that constant diversion. Um, it also fits within the other conversations we've kind of had around using tools to reduce distractions, reduce the number of phone calls you get, the number of emails, the batching idea of putting things together. But I think, especially with what we were talking about here with scope creep and everything, it really kind of still fits into that because if you let yourself get distracted by, oh, we have this feature coming, or oh, we have this, and you focus solely on that, but you'll get it done. But if you let other things distract you, like, oh, we could throw this in, or oh, we could, it's kind of one of those where it's like you could do too much and do harm versus staying on task, limit your scope, and get things done.
It's funny. I don't know if my employees actually watch this at all, but there's definitely one where I'm thinking exactly him because he'll take everything and there'll be 10 tickets and sometimes he'll take all 10 tickets and be like, okay, I'm working on all of them. And to some extent he is. I mean, he'll be moving around because he's working on all these stuff, but it really is, unless they are all in the same like chunk of code, it really is not efficient because I mean, there are times that it can be useful to do something like that. You can do two things at a time if one is like running in a background or something like that. Yeah, you can do that. But particularly if you're trying to, solve a problem, which is mostly what we're doing, then it's really hard to do two of those at once. It'd be like doing getting one of those puzzle books, which I think about because I was just traveling and you get those things, but where you're doing like a crossword puzzle and you're doing a logic problem at the same time. Yeah, it's like, cool. Yeah, great. You can do that. But no, that's going to be very distracting. Not to mention, same thing. It's like if you do a crossword and a Sudoku thing, it's a very different language effectively that you're dealing with. There's the context and everything, and that's often what we end up with. Even if it's the same application in the same language and everything else, the same portion of the application, there's going to be things like we're in a different file, we're in a different function, we've got different variables we're working with, all of those things that then I don't think we think about how much that costs us to sort of pick ourselves up, go to the other one, and sort of like settle into it, and then do some stuff, and then pick herself up, move her to the other, settle in, and then do some stuff. There's always some adjusting that has to go on to hit that. So I really like that. I think that's going to be like that is a good way to go because it is again on this like how do you get crap done? How do you really focus? And it's like it gets into that. Well, your estimates suck. Yeah, your estimates suck because you allow too many things to enter. I know that's pretty harsh, but it's like, and I'm not talking to you. I'm like, no, it's that guy over there. It's something like that where it's like you're not very good at it. And it's not that your estimates are bad, it's that you don't understand where your time is going. And that is where these tools actually, I think, are a great thing is when you start doing like the Pomodoro stuff, and I'll give you that word because you always forget it. When you start doing those Pomodoro things, it is amazing what you get done in like when I did it, I think I did last time I think I did 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off. What I got done in that 45 minutes was crazy. I ended up actually, sometimes I actually backed it down because I got so much done in 45. I was underestimating what I could get done. And I get done, I'm like, oh, I got 3 minutes left. But also going from, Pomodoro 1 to Pomodoro 2 when you try to do the 25-minute, 5 minute off, it is amazing how fast that 5 minutes disappears. Where you're like, I don't know how many times I would go from the 25 and it would be 10 or 15 minutes later before I'd be able to start again. Even if I'm just like refilling my tea and going to the bathroom. It's just like time goes too quick. That's why I moved it to the 15 is so I could more realistically have the breaks. But those are the things that we need to learn. What is the cost of firing up our email or answering that chat message or jumping on Slack or whatever it is understanding where those costs are.
Yeah, even within those, like with all these meetings now that a lot of people are still hybrid or virtual, you really can't focus if you have back-to-back meetings without a short break. I mean, people have to use the bathroom.
Yep.
So, or they need water. So you really should give your meeting times like a 5 minute lead in. Each meeting shouldn't be on the top of the hour. Maybe start 5 minutes in or end 5 minutes before the hour. Little things like that are huge. The other thing, and we'll get to into the actual episode, but when you're working on your tickets, yeah, you can take like those 10 tickets if it's a feature complete set of tickets. If you need all these tickets to actually do a feature set, then yes, that makes sense because you may need to build a database table, which you then need to call to then put the GUI. You can split that up, but unless you do them in the right order, you're going to have problems. Because if you do them out of order, you're going to be blocked. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't. And that's going to also mess things up. So,
All right. I think we got plenty to go for it. You guys got your bonus material before the episode this time, I think. I mean, we've been like already throwing some great little nuggets out there. So get your pencil and paper ready because we're about to get started. Well, hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season where we are going through the developer journey. We are building better developers. We are Developreneur. We're awesome like that. And you are part of us. It's we as a collective. My name, I'm going to go out of the royal we. My name is Rob Broadhead. I am one of the founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers, also a founder of RB Consulting, where we build better software, basically. We take the technology that's out there, and through integration, simplification, and automation, we find ways to allow you to better use your solutions to improve your processes and to make sure that you can focus on helping your customers and earning the almighty dollar without having as big a cost and without spending as much time trying to use all of those tools. I will start our good thing, bad thing this time around. So let's see. Where do I want to go with this one? Good thing. We'll start with my good thing. I like sometimes you just have days that are just productive. There's those days that we all have the days that aren't where we get to the end of the day and we're like, what? I wasted a day at work, or something like that. Yesterday, I'd come back. I hadn't done anything for a while, which may be part of what was related to it. And it was just bam, bam, bam. I was knocking stuff out left and right. Things were getting done. I was able to cross them off my list, which in itself is always awesome. So that was my good. Bad today, not so much. I've like had a couple of things I've done, but then gotten caught into some things that we're going to talk about in this episode, which is basically things like distractions and things like that. Is how do you stay on task? How do you stay focused? How do you make sure that your estimates are realistic and you're not interrupted by whatever it is? If it happens to be a toddler that comes up and bothers you periodically, if it's your neighbor that's cranking chainsaws, whatever it happens to be, those kinds of things. That being said, before we jump into it, I do want to allow Michael his opportunity to tell me all the good and bad about his life and introduce himself to you.
hey everyone, my name is Michael Meloche. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. And I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we help businesses assess their current tech stack, what software and utilities are using within their business to make sure that what they have meets their business needs. And if not, we help them find the right tools and technologies, or we'll build it for you. Good and bad. Good, similar to you. I had a really productive night last night. I was really hammering through some requirements and building out some user stories for a customer. Kind of good and bad with that. Went and talked to the customer today and basically had a fire hose of information that hit me in the face from the questions that I was able to build from the user stories and the requirements that I defined last night. So it is good and bad. The good, making progress. Bad, I was able to unpack a lot more, so a lot more work to do. But not necessarily scope creep because we're still on task. But we'll talk about that today.
And that is actually a good thing before we move into the meat of this is that this is something we're going to talk about a little is that sometimes you do need to, you're hit by the fire hose, and sometimes you need to call time out and step back and be able to absorb or digest what it is you get. This gets into some of the things we're going to talk about like we are human beings. We are built a certain way. We have some strengths and we have some weaknesses. And one of our strengths is not being able to be hit by 18 different things at once and being able to process all of that. Maybe Bruce Lee or somebody like that can do that, but we can't. So, if you don't know who Bruce Lee is, Google it, or use your favorite search engine. We'll say it that way. We'll say it in the generic approach. I want to talk about, and I want to talk about because Michael wanted to talk about the idea of staying on track, of focus, of avoiding distractions where you can, or working in the midst of distractions, because this is something that I think is very key to being successful, whether it is as an entrepreneur, whether as a developer, whether honestly even as a human being, is that the people that succeed almost always, particularly if they succeed at anything that requires work, anything that's not just really simple, it's going to be through focusing and making that a priority. That was something that, back in the day, and I think he still says it. I just haven't, heard from him a while, but like John Lee Dumas and what is it? Entrepreneurs on Fire, I think is what it was. It's something on fire. I know it's on fire. It's one of those. John Lee Dumas, check his stuff out. He talks about focusing, about was it find one course until solved or something like that. But it's basically it's focus. It's we do not, no matter what you think you do, whether you think you are a woman that can or a guy that can't, we don't really multitask that well. There are things that we can do. Yes, we can process multiple things at a time, but it's just like looking at something, vision. If you're looking at something, it is very easy to miss things in the peripheral. Yes, you may catch them, but you also can miss them. And it's the same thing when we get into focusing. And this is where we need to, if you're a Superman or Superwoman and you can multitask, okay, realize the rest of us are humans. And so when we are setting stuff up, whether for ourselves or for others, and by others, I'm talking about like when we're in meetings and things like that, we need to make sure that we have the wiggle room, we'll say, or the bandwidth built within that meeting so that people can actually get what they need to out of that meeting. Meetings are probably the worst because I know too many places where it is just back to back to back to back meeting. You're just in a meeting, you're in there, you're cranking through stuff, you don't have time to think about it, and then you're on to another one. And I was in a job for a while that I wasn't even a developer. I was just managing developers, and I would do sometimes 6 meetings back to back in a day, maybe a lunch break in there. And I would get to the end of it and I would spend most of the night having to try to like reconnect to what was all this stuff that's there, find a way to parse through that, look at my notes. And like some of it was like, what the heck was I thinking? I don't even remember that part. I don't know how those notes got there. Be cognizant of that stuff. There's a reason that schools and classes have a length that is typically 45 minutes to an hour at most. And if you have longer classes of 2 to 4 hours, you usually have more people falling asleep as you get into the later part of those things because we just struggle to focus. And these days, even more so because the younger generations have less and less ability to focus for long periods of time. They're used to stuff really fast. It may be phone related, maybe not. We'll never see. We'll never know. Actually, I think we all know that is why. So think about that as that when you're putting together meetings, when you're scheduling yourself for meetings, when you are setting up your schedule and what is your availability, make sure that you have time to digest what it is you're doing. Because if you don't, you went to that meeting, and if you're not able to properly digest it, then you've basically wasted that time. What's worse is you're you're not going to miss all of it, but you're also not going to get all of it. So it's not going to be till some point down the road that you're going to be able to find out that, oh, crud, I missed that important piece that I needed to get. Particularly, and this is to Michael's credit, like particularly if you're working on requirements and things like that, you really, those are the toughest ones. Is just like take as much in as you can, be focused on that, put the phones away for those of you that do that, and really focus on what it is you're working on. As a developer, I'll throw this one out and then pass it over to Michael. It's because this is a place I could talk all day. As a developer, it's the same thing, is focus on one task. Right? And an example I've used before is that when you're a developer, if you go grab like 8 tasks at once, then you're just grabbing 8 tasks at once. That doesn't mean you're working all 8 of them. You may think you are. Maybe you've coded one and you coded another and you coded another. But I could do that. I could walk through each of them and put a little boilerplate that says, Rob's doing this, Rob's doing this, Rob's doing it. That doesn't really move the ball forward. If I look at one, then I'm focused on moving the ball forward on that ticket. And now you may have some stuff that is connected in some way. So I need to work this ticket, but I also need to work that ticket because those two coincide. And I need to make sure I'm thinking about both of those. Maybe they have an integration point that I need to make sure that those are done in a way that it's easier for me to do those two together than for me to do it, Michael to do it, and for us to constantly have a conversation about what does that integration point look like. But other than that, and that even then should, if your tickets require you to grab 3 or 4 at a time, then they probably weren't written right. There is something wrong about how they were done. You should be able to go work one, complete it, and move it through the process so that people can start testing it. You can move on to the other one and you can move forward. If you have to hold off completion until another one is done, that's okay. But it's like you should just don't try to fake everybody out. Work one ticket at a time. Get it to completion. Get it to done, and then move to the other thing. I think I haven't vented enough, but I think I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to let you throw your thoughts into this because I know you have a couple of thoughts on it as well.
Yeah. So let me give you a simple scenario. We were talking about developers being developers and developer focus, but in reality, as humans, we typically have been told for years that we can multitask. You can do more than one thing at a time. And while you can, the true idea of multitasking is a lie. You can really only do one task at a time, and you need to do it well. Otherwise, you're basically putting one block down in the foundation, going over here, answering the phone. The blocks aren't building themselves. So if you sit there and you build the blocks, then you go talk on the phone, finish that call, and then you come back and you maybe start the next column. If you do things in an organized way, we've talked about this before, talked about batching and different ways of managing your time. The idea is if you're constantly being distracted, either self-imposed or environmental distractions, you're never going to really be able to truly focus on what it is that you're working on and do a good job. You may do an adequate job, you may get it done, but when we're writing code, that typically leads to bugs. That typically leads to missed requirements. We don't want those things to happen. So we need to kind of stay focused, put those blinders on a little bit, and just stay in our lane and get things done. Now, in reality, we have meetings, we have phone calls, we have messengers, we have distractions. Unfortunately, and I've been bad about this too, I'll get into the point where I'm too focused or it's too quiet. Like you get other distractions that unfortunately are sometimes self-imposed, and you'll turn on the radio and now you're listening to music and you're distracted by the music and you're not really focused on what you're doing. Or you have the TV on and you're now suddenly watching the news, not working. Or you're in a meeting trying to chat with someone in the messenger and you missed a very critical, important detail about a project. So these are the things that I was referring to when we're talking about this particular topic, because typically, again, we're told that, we can do multiple things. You should be able to do multiple things. But the problem is, if we're not doing the right things, we're going to be distracted. We're not going to be able to stay on task. It's going to take longer for these things to get done. You know, in the past two podcasts, we've talked about sprints. You know, we don't want our tickets to be kicked down the road. We don't want them to keep being pushed down. We want to get our work done. We want to get the requirements. We want to make sure that we understand it. We do the work, we get it done, and we can release the software on time. It's just one of those situations where you have to have a lot of self discipline, but a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. Either people need to point out that, hey, you're not focused on this or you're not doing this. You know, things like that in our professional career can be handled by our managers or by our teammates by doing one-on-ones, by doing 360s where you do the anonymous reviews of your fellow uh, employees, your fellow teammates, to see that everyone's on task. So, well, we have to be aware of our environment and we have to be aware of our tasks. There are other things we can do as teams to work together to stay on track, to make sure we're doing what we need to do and help avoid some of those distractions. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that annoys me is when people say that they listen to, and unfortunately, I'm going to throw us under the bus here, listen to podcasts while they work. Now, how can you focus on what you're listening to while you're working? You know, if you're driving, sure, you can half listen, but you should be focused on the road. There are things you need to do to be safe. There are things you need to do to get your job done. And if you're finding yourself distracted or doing too many things, maybe it's time to look and say, hey, I need to stop doing something while I'm doing something else.
Wow. That's actually, there's a lot of great stuff there. So I do have to say, if you think that you can multitask and that, boy, the podcasting while you're developing, listening to podcast, like that's a, that definitely is one of those that's really easy to get distracted. But if you think that that's not the case, then what do you think about people talking on the phone while they drive? That's a mic drop right there. It's like that's proof you cannot multitask. Don't tell me that you can, because that should be almost mutually exclusive. And it's not, because you have almost been hit by somebody, whoever, all of you out there have almost been hit by somebody chatting away on their phone, not paying attention, or even worse, heads down looking at something on their phone and they're not paying attention to you. Some of you may have hit somebody because you were doing that same thing. Now, if you think that we are just full of it, I would challenge you. And this is something that, even if you know that we're right, I would challenge you anyways. Try to, tomorrow or today, depending on when you're doing this, set aside, block a time, whatever it is, 30 minutes, an hour. Probably can't go beyond that, because we talk about there's only so much time we can really be focused and get the most out of it. But pick like a 30-minute, actually just pick a 15-minute slot. This goes back to when we've done a lot of these, learn something over a period of days in 15-minute chunks, because it goes back to way, way back. I had, on part of my schedule, I had one product I was building, this little side hustle thing. I was building this product and I was like, I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day on it. And I was writing a book at the same time. I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day on it. The first thing I found, it is really hard to restrict yourself to 15 minutes. Once you get into anything like that, it is really hard. And it really is. 15 is too little, because it's really hard to settle in, focus, get something done, and get it all done by 15 minutes. You're going to, like, when that alarm goes off, you're going to be like, dang it, didn't get it done. You're going to be scrambling to get stuff. However, those 15 minutes were focused, particularly after the first couple of times I tried it. I was amazed at how much I could crank out in a 15-minute period. More so if you try like a Pomodoro approach, or one of those where we get into something where it's like a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour, and you are focused. And I mean focused, like shut off the email, put the phone away, just focus on your task. Even if your task, for example, would be something that's somewhat multitasking, like I'm writing code, but I'm also having to deal with, maybe I'm manipulating data. So I'm going back and forth between writing code and writing some SQL statements or viewing some data, things like that. Even if it's in itself, the task has multitasking built into it. There's where you're having to shift gears. If you can just focus on that, I dare you, because you will get done and you'll be like, wow, I got a lot of crap done. Now, if you're a manager, that does not mean that you're behind schedule and you take all your people and you say, I'm going to lock you in a room for 8 hours and you're going to get a lot of crap done, because that's not how it works. It's still, we still have that, depending on where we're at, probably, 45 minutes, maybe an hour 15, hour 20. I don't know, everybody, and there's studies, so you can go look those things up, but we are designed to do like work, and then we got to take a breath. Now, it could be something you're like, hey, I got to go drink. I go pee. Well, if you don't drink, you're not going to have to pee. And if you don't pee, you're not going to have to drink, or something like that. But there's still physical constraints. That is what I'm trying to get to, is that put yourself in a situation where you can be successful. Get rid of the distractions. There are lots of tools out there. There are a lot of things. We've talked about it. You can go search the Developreneur sites. You can see about all the different ways that you can help yourself focus on that task. And I guarantee you, it will in itself make you a better developer. You're going to find out that you're going to write, as Michael alluded to, you're not going to have as many bugs. You're probably going to have better tests. You're going to have better flow to your code because you didn't stop and go write it, and then pick it back up later and sort of forget where you're at. Everything is going to look better. And I say this as somebody who doesn't do it often enough. There are too many times that I get stuck, pulled away from something, and I come back and I'm like, man, I wish I had been able to finish that thought before I got distracted, because now I'm having to think back through, where was I at? What did I, sometimes like, what code did I write? What code did I not write? What did I finish and what did I not finish? If you can focus, it will pay huge dividends. So don't shy away from that. Don't be afraid of doing things like, put something on, if you're a place that's run by schedules and meetings and all that, put something on your calendar. And if somebody double books you, be free to say, I'm sorry, I'm already booked. Now, if it's your boss, you may have to worry about that, but that's a conversation to have, is say, look, if you want me to work, this is what I need to do. If you want me to just hang out at meetings, okay, I will go to all those meetings. Now, you're going to want to say it better than that, because most people are going to take that in a bad way and they're going to be like, take a hike. But find a way, that may be a difficult conversation you need to have. And I have seen a lot of people do it successfully. And it's basically approached as, look, I'm going to be more effective if I'm not in that meeting. If you can summarize it, if you can let me know what needs to be there. Now, if you're an integral part, you're an integral part of that. That's okay. But even then, say, hey, I need to have time to get stuff done. So please respect my schedule. When I've got something on the schedule, don't double book me. Please, and sometimes it's just as easy as pushing back and saying, hey, I'm double booked. I need you to reschedule. Sometimes it's a little more difficult. That is obviously some things I'm very passionate about, because I think that is a lot of the ebb and flow that we have as developers, is that I talked about that as a good and bad just recently. We have our good days. We're very productive. And we have our bad days when we're not. And most often we're going to find that the bad days when we aren't as productive, we got interrupted, we were trying to multitask, or there was something that took us away from our ability to just sit down and just like knock out a problem. And if your problems are too big, if you have too much that's on the plate to be able to get that, find a way the first problem you want to solve is, how do I break this down into bite-sized chunks so I can make that progress? That was one of the things that I learned with doing the 15-minute approach. And I'm not writing a book on it. It's not something that I've thought about more than like in this episode, but it is something that I got out of that, was particularly with my side hustle. I had a project I was building. I had an application I was building. And part of my starting every week was, I looked at, what can I get done in 15-minute increments through this week? I explicitly had to spend a little bit of time. And sometimes you could do that. Like, take your first day of the week, take 15 minutes and just break down the next hour, the next 4 days of 15 minutes. What can I get done in those? Because when you start breaking that stuff down, one, it allows you to really focus on it. Two, once again, now you're constraining what you have to think about, integration, all that kind of other stuff. You're now on a very small thing, so it's a problem that's going to be easier to solve. It's just like anything else. If you wanted to melt a huge block of ice, it's a lot easier if the first thing you do is smash it into a bunch of little pieces, because now those little pieces can much more easily be melted. I mean, it's a one of those things that's in nature. If we can take it in a smaller bite, it's going to be easier. I'm going to take a small but actually very large breath and pass that back to you, because I think we've got a couple things there we've talked about.
Yeah, one additional thing I'd like to add to that is be conscious of your task. What is it that you're working on? Because a lot of times we'll be assigned tasks or work on tasks that have future deadlines. Like this ticket, which should maybe take an hour, isn't due till Friday, and we're picking up on a Monday. One of the biggest things I see is people fill all that time between Monday and Friday to get that ticket done. The other flip side of that is if it's something you don't want to do or you dread doing, or it's just something you don't have fun doing, you tend to kick that down the road. You procrastinate. You find things to do to avoid doing that, which leads to this distraction. So you're essentially giving yourself permission to be distracted because you don't want to work on this ticket. My recommendation there is work on the least, basically your least favorite task first, get them out of the way, preferably earlier in the day, so that the rest of your day you're going from a less happy mind frame back to a happy mind frame, so you don't end the day unhappy and take that into your personal time. So just a lot of the things we talked about here and we've talked about before in tools is, again, focus on what you're working on. If you find yourself filling that time because you don't want to work on it, get it done. Move it to the top of the list, get it done. If you find that you have tasks to do that aren't due for another day, well, then get them done now, or don't take them on until you get closer to that date. Work on something else that's more pressing. You know, prioritize your time. We've talked about batching. Batch your processes. If you have to be on the phone 3, 4, 5 times a day to call people, do that all in one time frame. Are people not, if you're having to call the same person 3, 4 times a day because they're not there, but you typically find out that almost every person you need to call is by their phone between like 2 and 3, move all your call times to 2 to 3 so that you're calling people and not doing that wasted task of calling, hanging up, leave a message, call, hey, batch. Organize your tasks so that you can stay focused and stay on task.
There was a lot of great stuff in there. That is all incredibly important. I do want to go back to the first one. Is it's the idea of eating the frog, is doing the thing that you dislike the most first. Make that your highest priority and get that thing done. And I will just add on to that, because Michael did a great explanation of it, is think about when you've had something that you didn't want to do, that you dreaded, that you were stressing. And these could be difficult conversations, as well as maybe a difficult task or a not fun task. When you've gotten those done, think about how you felt, because that always is in itself, like, that's a better win. If I get to the end of a day and the only thing I got done was the one thing that I dreaded, my day is great. If I still have that thing I dreaded and I got 4,000 other things done, spoiler alert, probably 399,000 of those or whatever was totally useless crap that I didn't need to do, but I'm not going to feel as good. It's embrace the discomfort of getting that thing done so you can embrace the glory of getting it done and off your plate. And it reduces stress. It does so many good things to you on a physiological level that it is a very valuable approach to take. You can go search eating the frog, and you will find a lot of productivity gurus that is one of the things they talk about. That is very often one of the things, however they look at it, take the things you want to do least first, get them out of the way, and then it frees you up, as Michael said. So now you have a happier day, and you're not getting to the end of the day going, crap, I still got to look at that tomorrow. I got to think about it. Like, just get it done and get it out of the way, and you're ready to have a happier life through all of that. We would have a happier life if you would take that thing that really isn't that hard. Is just send us an email at info@developreneur.com and let us know what it is that you would like to hear from us. What are some of the topics you would like us to cover? We still have a little bit of time before we're done with the developer journey season. And so if there's something that you would like us to talk about in the developer journey, or something you think we've missed, because we have sort of progressed our way through it as we're going, shoot us an email, let us know. We would love to do that. We'll even give you credit or leave you anonymous, whatever you want to do, to say, hey, we got this great idea from Bob and Sheboygan, or from some anonymous person that's not Bob and Sheboygan. We'll do a better job of being anonymous than that. And we would love to just like take that information and use it for our whether it's this season or future season and future topics. You can also check us out on developreneur.com. We got a lot of information out there, a lot of places to go. We even find that often useful to us. We will search it and use it as reference material. You can check us out at school.developreneur.com. You can also leave us any kinds of comments here, whether you're here is the YouTube, whether it's the podcast stuff. The Developreneur is the channel on YouTube. Podcast, it's Developreneur Building Better Developers, actually is specifically the advertise or the name wherever you're going to use it, wherever you podcast. If you go to one of those lady in the boxes, we won't say their name because sometimes that triggers stuff. You can say, hey, I would like to listen to the Building Better Developer podcast. And guess what? They're going to fire up the most recent episode. So there's things like that that are available that, hey, it's the technology we've found a way to use, so it helps you help yourself better. That being said, we're going to wrap this one up. We will return. We are not done with this season. As always, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Bonus material, although we sort of started with bonus material. I don't know if we need it's like bonus material at this point.
Yeah, I would just say a lot of the topics we talked about in today's episode build we're constantly building on that. But one of the biggest things I would challenge based on a few things you threw out at the end is if you find yourself stressing or literally thinking about work at night, revisit your day and look at what you did. Did you work on the tasks that you're stressing about? Or did you fill that time with something else not as important? And if you are, revisit that. Look at what you need to be getting done so that you can be more mindful at the end of the day and be more relaxed and more in the moment with your family, friends, whatever, out of work. Leave work at work, but don't take it with you. If you're taking it with you, you aren't focusing on the right things at work to keep your mind clear at the end of the day.
That is like a building better life kind of thing. And that's something that it's funny. I just finished up reading all of if you know kind of thing, but all of the Shannara series books, which it ends up being like 37 books. It's taken me a couple of years to get through all of them. And I went from like start to finish. The story covers like, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 years of characters and stuff. But the point to this is that I started it as I needed something at the end of the day to pull me out of work. It is too easy for me to like work and then just boom, fall asleep. But then I end up like I'm writing code in my dreams, and that code is not very useful. I have never gotten a single line of good code that comes out of that. Not to mention the fact that you've got like, depending on where you're at in life, but you probably have family. You should have family and hobbies and things that you do that are not work. Even if you love your work, doing work that is different from your work, working on your side hustle. If you're like us, if you're a gamer, occasionally crank out a couple of games or do something, ride a bike, sit under a tree and read a book, whatever it is that gets you away, because that will fulfill you and allow you to recharge and be able to better use the hours that you have. So that really is critical. I think that's one of those things. It's like, we love to fill our days, and we've talked about this a lot of times. When we get into the holiday specials, these are the things that we've that we've discussed in the past is that yes, we burn the candle at both ends. That's just the developer thing is that we work long hours and we talk about it all the time. We brag about it basically. We have war stories about it, even while we're cussing about the people that did it. But that's just like part of what we do. But we need to make sure that with all of the ways we can be more productive, we can fill more minutes of our day. We need to realize that we will be more productive if we fill less of those hours with basically like just filler, and instead be very productive. Go do your job, go do your work, go do the thing that you need to do, and then be done with it. Set it aside, and then you can come back tomorrow on whatever that problem is. Or it's just like a phone call. If you're talking to 8 people at once on the phone, you're not going to give anybody anything. It's not going to be good to anybody. Everybody's going to hate it. But if you talk to one person and then you hang up, now that's done. You got that done. It's the same thing with productivity. So it's maybe drifted a little bit from where we originally discussed it, but I think there's a lot of stuff that, trust us, we live and breathe this kind of stuff all the time. This is the stuff that we are constantly working on, ways to make all these little life hacks and micro adjustments and things like that to keep us sane while also keeping us productive. And obviously, the sane part we really struggle with. The productive we're a little bit better at. Parting thoughts, and we'll wrap this one up.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway, we have to take care of ourselves. Like we did drift a little bit more into kind of a life hack than just building better developers, but focus, task creep, really be mindful of what it is that you're working on, what it is you need to get done, and just stay on task, get it done, then do the next thing. Again, I love saying this because it's really true. Multitasking is a lie. You can do one thing at a time. You can split the work and it will take twice as long. And if you're splitting the work, then you're splitting your focus. And we've talked about that before, but the more you split your focus, the more draining it is, and the less you're really going to be focusing on the quality of what it is that you're working.
And that really is where the better developer comes from, is that it is a craft, it is an art, it is something that we cannot just casually do it and get better. There's going to be things we'll miss. And so while it's about productivity, it really is about being a better developer, because honestly, that's the value you bring as a better developer. There are studies where crappy developers, they don't call them that, but low end or beginner developers are 10 times or more, or 10 times or, good developers are 10 times or more effective than not good developers. There's a huge dichotomy between the people that are just like slinging some code and those that really can just like crank and do stuff. There's a lot of reasons for it, but that productivity is part of it, is being able to focus, being able to not get distracted by the language, not get distracted by the tools, those kinds of things. All of those little things add up. And that includes things like having your email open, having your phone buzzing next to you, all that kind of stuff. And we'll have to talk another time, a topic of what happens when you get distracted and it ticks you off, because I've had a few of those, and it's stuff like I answer a phone and I'm like, sorry, I did not mean to be that rude when I answered the phone that way. Or I'm sorry, I did not, that was uncool. I reacted a little too much, but hey, it's like, some people, it's like PTSD or something like that. It's one of those things where it's like, just, don't startle the people that are like really focused, and how we deal with those kinds of situations. So that may be something we put on our list. That being said, we have way given you too much bonus stuff. Well, we haven't. We love giving you stuff. It's all out there. Give us feedback, whether you like it or not. Not whether you like your feedback or not, but whether you like us or not. Obviously, see, we've been doing this too long. I need to break. I need to get away from this, and I'm not as productive as I was before. Proof right there. If it happens to me, it must happen to you. As always, go out there and have yourself a great one. We will talk to you next time. We'll be back. We'll be wrapping up this season, a few more episodes here and there, and get through the developer journey. Let us know if you have any suggestions for the next one. And have yourself a great day. We'll talk to you next time.